Welcome back to Unlabelled and Limitless. I am your co host, Lois and Faye, and this is part two of our series on rest. Today I am joined by Faye, and we are taking a slightly different angle. We talk about how psychology has often focused on what is wrong instead of what is working, how trauma and environment shape neurodivergent brains, and why rest is so much more than just getting 8 hours of sleep. We also get into the 7 types of rest, from sensory and emotional rest to creative and social rest, and how each of us finds them in very personal ways. Let us dive in.
Okay, so I was just saying that basically, as we have just finished our master's degrees, a lot of the critique of psychology today is that so much of it has focused on what is wrong and very little of it has focused on what is right. When I did my undergrad back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I loved psychology. It's what I wanted to do, but I felt really disillusioned because it didn't represent what I thought it would have done. Maybe if I'd stayed in it, I would have been part of that wave of change, but it was something that I was like, that's kind of disappointing that this is the way they're looking at things. I wonder if because we're so focused on treating depression, but not celebrating what's right. It's like everything is deficit focused, really, like looking at what's wrong and how to fix it rather than seeing what might be right and good and how to increase that in a person's life.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's like language that's used as well. Like even the fact that deficit is part of ADHD and
And
the
disorder with
yeah,
ASD, right?
yeah, I was about to say the use of the term disorder, which I think a lot of people are trying to replace with condition now, like autistic spectrum condition, not disorder, because disorder implies that there is something wrong when actually it's not. It's just a difference. I've always felt like that with a lot of mental health conditions and the names for them as well, personality disorders. And actually, you could argue, like, by definition, yes, like the whole fact it is a condition to be diagnosed means that there is something that makes the person stand out from the average person. But people tend to focus on the traits and symptoms people have and not why they have it in the first place, like not really what's happened in the past to get them from A to B. And this is why I love Dr. Gabor Mate. And I don't know if we've ever had this conversation, or I might have said it to you outside of podcasting, but his book, and the name escapes me, but his book about ADHD was what kind of first um, introduced me to the idea of that I really relate what he's saying. He goes into the fact that his belief is that ADHD is actually an adaptation to the environment and not having needs met as an infant. So the nervous system and the brain rewires itself to adapt to the conditions, and that's what creates this weird and wonderful, and I say weird, you can see I'm like smiling about it because it is. It makes us hypervigilant, it makes us great in emergencies, so responsive and reactive to stuff because it's of how we've grown up and been taught that we need to be. Obviously, it can cause a lot of difficulties because of it. But the point I'm trying to make is he's saying that this is a condition that can go all the way back to when you're old enough to even start developing properly. Um, and I think it's the same with a lot of other conditions. Most of the research about autism is that you are born with it, so it's not developed, it's you just have a brain that is. When we're looking at, I guess, mental health and things like that and developmental dis conditions, I even have to stop myself using that word. Where have they come from? Why has that come from? Like, things have come in place to create that, and I think that's something that gets missed a lot. People focus so much on the crime and the person as a criminal, rather than actually, if we can unpick and dissect and look into how that person ended up committing this crime, like what led to that. There is someone I know of, and I don't know them personally, and I don't know a lot of details. I think that it's fine to talk about this because I don't know enough for them to be identifiable from what I'm about to say. But there is someone who spent quite a long time in prison for quite a serious crime, but obviously they are not in prison anymore. They have been released, which means they are deemed fine to be back in society. During their stay in prison, they had a lot of time to reflect and utilize creativity. They were really into art and got more into art, and they used their art to express themselves. And they're quite open about the fact that it started for them in childhood. And it's, if you look all the way back, and it's like to that little boy or girl who was experiencing what they were going through and just the impact that has had, I feel like a lot of people don't understand that it really can make or break a person, like their experiences. Look at it, like this really is a tangent, so we're all going back eventually. If you look at addiction, right, addiction, childhood abuse, so many cases of people becoming addicts because of something horrendous that has happened to them as a child. But people who don't get that just see the addict, and they get tarred with this brush of someone who's like chosen to get into that. And no one chooses that. I don't think anyone sits there and goes, you know what would be really fun if I get physically and mentally dependent on this substance or this outlet. No, but yeah, it really, I think we do need to put more energy into not looking at the symptoms or the traits or the event, but like the cause, because then we can prevent it in people in the future.
And there's so many different ways to intervene in these different areas, right? We're in the middle of this global mental health crisis, and there are so many people seeking mental health care that are actually neurodivergent, and they are starting on the cycle we've spent a lot of our adult life going through until somebody identified in us, hey, I think I know what the issue is here, and I know how to not fix it, but help you control it, improve your daily life with different tools and things, right? It's basically somebody says, I can see what's going on, and here are some tools to help you. And you finally like, oh, this is great. But before that, you touch on something really good, like that trauma and how much trauma we hold on to in our bodies, in our brains, in ways that we don't understand within our nervous system and things like that. And they do rewire our brain, and they rewire our hormones, and all of those environmental factors are super important. When you talk about somebody being in prison and discovering their creativity, I was thinking that person finally found a space to rest. Even though they clearly done something to belong there, they had energy, talent, skills, whatever it was. The outlet was just not right for them because nobody ever influenced that outlet. I did a presentation quite recently for employers and HR teams called Are We the Employees That You're Looking For? Because in the job world, there's all this talk about we're in this growth cycle. We need creative thinkers, problem solvers. Operations people were cool a few years ago, but now everybody's stagnant. They need people to think them out of the boxes they put themselves in, right? So it looks like there's an uptick in this desire to hire neurodivergent employees. It's become a buzzword. It's become a thing companies are doing. And on social media, all over the place, all over LinkedIn, it's like neurodiversity, neuroinclusion, neuro blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of telling people the what and the how. And some personal stories of people saying, hey, while I was in the workplace, I was having this struggle, and these are some recommendations I could make for you. But I don't think the messages are reaching the places that they're reaching. And I still think it comes across very deficit focused and very, because how far down is somebody going to read, here are 10 accommodations that you can make today in your workplace? Maybe some HR person's going to see it and put that into practice, but the reality is probably not. People with specific accommodations struggle to get those accommodations met. Telling people these are some things you could do, they don't get that. Understanding the pressure we have put on the mental health system over the years trying to discover what is wrong with us, the pressure we've put on ourselves in lost productivity and exhaustion, in burnout, in masking and things like that, because we couldn't understand why this pill didn't fix it, or this therapy didn't fix it, or like this class in organization and prioritization didn't fix it, or this planner. And with each failure that you go through with this expectation of you should be this, it puts additional pressure on the mental health system. Right now, we have socioeconomic disparity at levels that we haven't seen since probably back in the 1700s. America's prison population is absolutely massive, and the majority of it is Black and Hispanic Americans. If you consider 20% of the population in general is probably neurodivergent, and ADHD is anything from 5 to 15%, because it's one of the more common denominators. A lot of people in those prisons are young, male, Black individuals that are just not getting the awareness, the treatment, the social support, and things like that. These are some incredibly talented people, but we allow them to go from school to prison. There's this school to prison pipeline and some great documentaries and investigations into it. Because America is run on an industrial system, so they need to keep as many people in prisons as possible to keep people's paychecks fat, which is an absolute disgrace. And because Black people have been put at such a disadvantage socioeconomically, followed closely by Hispanic people, they're just not getting the services. There isn't the awareness in the community. Well, there are actually tons of people in my neighborhood that are brilliant role models, and they're doing their best, but there's no systemic support for it. So we instead just do this school to prison pipeline where the schools are underfunded, undersupported. These kids don't get diagnosed, just like we didn't get diagnosed. We were lucky that we were in the UK with standardized expectations and school uniforms and this kind of structure that we had that doesn't exist as much here. And then everybody looks at this deficit and what's wrong with the community instead of recognizing like there's some incredibly talented people, some incredibly motivated people. You got to be seriously motivated to stand outside on a street corner all night to keep watch over the block as part of your duty to the neighborhood, right? Whether you're selling drugs or watches, that takes a serious amount of and it sounds ridiculous, but it does. The togetherness and the brotherhood of being part of a gang or a group and trading and doing all those things takes organizational skills. It takes planning. It takes trust. It takes, right? So those skills are there, but people look at those skills being used in the only way they really know how, because that's the only opportunity that exists. Then it becomes a deficit, right? And then it's like, oh, all Black people commit crimes. And it's like, absolutely not. They're like entrepreneurs. They're out there hustling. They're keeping their economy circular. They're helping each other out in times of need because that's what they do for each other, because it's a brotherhood. It's not like something else, right? And there's a lot to be gained from that with the right supports and the right kind of looking at what's right and how to nurture those skills. It could be a completely different world I'm talking about the community that I live inside of. I've lived in Harlem for 17 years. I know my neighbors well. They talk to me about the different problems that they have. And I know the kids in the neighborhood, the ones that are doing well and why they're doing well versus the ones that are not doing so well, etc. So, yeah, I think we've gone a long way from resting right now.
I'm
We've gone
thinking
into
that
solving world problems here.
podcast thing.
Yeah, but when you look at the prisons, and I think it's the same in the UK too, when you look in the general population of prisons, there's probably a ton of people in there with ADHD
Yeah,
ended up taking that criminal pathway. If
because
we had better support, diagnostics, encouragement, and hope, we wouldn't be feeding the prisons.
yeah, because fundamentally, what people don't understand is that the brain doesn't care where its source of dopamine comes from. It just wants it. So it will put you at risk. It will put you in situations that morally you shouldn't be doing or you don't actually want to be doing, but getting that dopamine hit when you have a brain that struggles to regulate it and make enough, your body makes that like survival is life or death. I'm convinced as well, a lot of people, especially like petty crime or like crimes that don't necessarily involve harming other people. So maybe, I don't know, yeah, crime does harm other people, but there's difference between, oh, I'm doing something like robbing a bank versus choosing to cause specific harm to a person. And like some of those things, like even the people that people get involved in, I think it's because there's excitement around it, because it's, oh my goodness, what are we doing next? This is risky, blah, blah, blah. I do think you're right. Like, there's more education and awareness and access to diagnoses and understandings before, it would prevent a lot of that. But
And a lot of
hopefully one day.
trips to different therapists and trials of medications, right? It's kind of like getting to that thing that works quickly. When you do that, you learn earlier about the rest cycle, the importance of taking care of yourself, because you start to observe what feeds you and what drains you, what activities give you energy and what activities steal your energy.
Yeah.
And I know something really important for you and I is actually exercise is rest to us, right? I feel fulfilled and peaceful and good when I've exercised. And I know that you're big into that as a kind of resting.
I think it's almost mindful because your brain is focusing on what you're doing. It's not thinking about the rest of the day and what happened with this person 10 years ago. It's literally like, I'm trying to lift half my body weight. This is a lot of hard work. I need to focus on my form. Emotion is energy in motion. So if you've got a build-up of stress or anxiety, it's really helpful to release that, plus the endorphins you get. I did a psychoeducational group back in August where one of the sessions, I can't remember if it was solely on exercise, but exercise was a big part of it. And one of the assistant psychologists went as far as to say, you guys need to be looking at exercise almost as medicine, like it's as important as insulin to a diabetic, because that is how helpful it is for the brain throughout the day, which is so true. I even look at how I am a few hours afterwards, even halfway into the day after doing something in the morning. I feel more focused, less jittery, less fidgety, less restless, and generally a bit more like my emotional regulation's a little bit more stable and probably less likely to get wound up at something that could have really me up had I not done my exercise. When I said about looking for dopamine and other things, I know for a fact, right, and I used to think that this was self-sabotage, but sometimes I have done things that I wouldn't necessarily choose to do if I was rested and content overall, because I've almost needed that as a break from everything else. For example, I know it's quite common that, and I'm not advocating for it, but it is common that especially, in fact, I was going to say especially ADHD, but no, self-medication, particularly through alcohol, is also very common with autism as well, because I find it really helps with social anxiety for me. But yeah, I notice I'm not getting enough rest in other areas if I then choose to go out and probably drink more than I usually would, because that's almost forcing me to have a break. There's one way you're going to forget about it. So, yeah, I guess that's another spin on it. Doing the things that are genuinely good for you to get rest, you end up finding it in unhealthy and unsustainable ways.
That is a really good call out on point. And yeah, it's that addictive behavior is self-medicating, right? So it's like the saying, the devil makes work for idle hands, and it absolutely does. If we're sitting there in an empty room bored, then our brains are going to find us a job to do, and it may not be in our best interest, right? It
Yeah.
might end up being a total calamity. Although the older you get, obviously, the more control you have over those things, and you can practice mindfulness and waiting and things like that. But when you're younger and your hormones are racing and you're trying to figure out how to satisfy that itch in your brain and that feeling of like, I haven't found the thing I belong to yet or belong in yet, it drives you to make decisions sometimes that you might not normally make. And then you're absolutely right as well. Like, you choose alcohol and you end up drinking a little bit too much, you're groggy the next day, you might not make the best decisions for yourself again. It's like that knock-on
Yeah, it's a
effect.
domino.
And then it's a very quick spiral back downwards into a very unrestful place. Something that I'm picking up from this conversation that I think is kind of important is that we're talking about these abstract situations that we put ourselves in that take our rest away from us, right? Versus the things that we can do that may not be sleeping, because we think of sleep being 8 hours, which is super important. I could talk about that for hours too, and how good it feels to get a good night's sleep. I love it. Rest can be lots of different things, right? It's more about being able to be mindful in those moments, like when you're exercising, understanding the connection between your body, your mind, and what it can do, and expanding beyond that, right? If you're cleaning, I used to really resent cleaning. Now I see it as a meditative practice. I can be mindful, think about the things I'm grateful for while I'm cleaning my space. I can honor myself by cleaning my space. I make it more of a practice of gratitude than a chore that I've hated doing since I was a kid. I think there's lots of daily things we do that we give ourselves negative energy about. It's like the phone call we don't want to make because we're terrified of what's going to happen, even though something's just going to get sorted out and we're going to be like, oh, that was easy. And this kind of does the same thing to you in that, like, you're looking at those. I don't know what, I lost my thought there. Sorry.
I think I know where you're going. I end up taking a negative route into rest because I'm not doing it enough in the daily things. I'm not finding it in pockets where I could. People say all the time, if you don't pick a time to rest, your body will choose for you. And obviously I've been unwell for, this is coming up to 3 weeks now. I'm a lot better now since they said about the sinus infection. I've been treating that. But the fact that I even got a sinus infection on top of what I had is a reflection of the fact that I haven't been looking after myself properly. My immune system is not as good as it has been previously, and because I'm burnt out, so everything is worse because, and again, that's the importance of, like, I probably should have, when I had what I suspected was COVID, taken time off work, but I was more worried about, but then all this stuff I'm going to have to come back to, and like things aren't going to get done. So I pushed through. I've made myself worse because of it. Whereas if I'd have taken that time at the beginning to rest, I probably wouldn't be sat here with a sinus infection 2 weeks later. I don't know if you knew this. There's 7 types of rest, which I found out recently. So yeah, it's like the physical. So yeah, sleeping, napping, or like any sort of bodily relaxation, meditation, mindfulness kind of can fall into that. And some overlap anyway. Then there's mental, emotional, sensory, spiritual, social, and creative.
Yes.
So that's really interesting because for me, when I realised that there was that many and what they incorporated, a lot of the things that were rest for me, I didn't realise were until, like for me, sensory rest. An example would be sitting in a dark room with nothing happening. I love going to the cinema because it's like 2 hours where no one can reach me. I can't look at my phone. I can't get distracted by anything else. I'm forced to look at this screen and what is going on and focus on it. If I'm not absorbed in the film, which rarely happens, to be honest, because I know what I'm into from a trailer if I'm going to like a film. So I already know before I go that I'm going to love this film and I'm going to be absorbed in it for 2.5 hours. So for me, that's sensory rest because I've got one thing to focus on and I have to sit still. And yes, I like usually have a drink and snacks and stuff, but genuinely, most of the time, I escape into this film and I love it. So it's a form of rest for me. Some people, that's their idea of hell, but for me, it's great. It gives me emotional rest because I feel, and this I think is more to do with my autism than anything. So quite often I have alexithymia, which for those who aren't like well versed on kind of psychological terms, basically it means sometimes I struggle to access or explain or put into words or even know how I'm feeling in any given moment. So someone could even give me a wheel with emotions with different things and I still couldn't tell you what I'm feeling off that wheel because I don't know. Films, and I don't know if it's the way that the story is, the emotions that the actors are showing, because I don't know them, so I'm detached, or a mixture of the music, but they allow me to release whatever in a safe environment, because I usually go on my own. That's the reason I like going on my own as well, because I feel like it's a safe space for me to cry, laugh, process whatever I feel about what's going on, which then actually links back to my own life. I learn a lot more from stories and metaphors. Oh, this story is literally written and made up by someone, but these situations could happen in your life. This is how you felt processing that, so you can learn from that and then put it into your own. For me, it ticks like loads of boxes, and I didn't even realise till I learned about that. That's what it was doing. Is there anything for you where you're like, it's not really a standard type of rest, but it is for you?
There's a few things. I just want to make sure I've got the right terminology here.
It's all right.
But what you're talking about is a psychoanalytic term called sublimation. It's a defense mechanism where someone unconsciously channels unacceptable urges or impulses into socially acceptable or often productive activities. Why can't there be positive sublimation too? Instead of acting on harmful impulses, a person might channel aggression into a sport or channel sexual energy into artistic expression, right?
Yeah.
So somebody like, oh my gosh, what's the director called from Dusk Till Dawn and Pulp Fiction and Tarantino? Yes. So you might look at Quentin Tarantino's movies as being sublimation of his impulses because he can't carry them out in life. He expresses them in the movie, right? But you can also sublimate your feelings and emotions through that. So I'm just wondering if it's a type of sublimation where you would go to the movies and you're feeling through those characters and processing through them rather than processing for yourself. It's like making the movie and the characters the container for your emotion. And then by the end of the movie, they're giving it back to you in a palatable way that you can process.
Yeah, maybe. What's interesting though is I never, not consciously anyway, I've never gone to watch a film and gone, oh, I want to see this because I know it's going to allow me to do that. Like it's always about interest, about what the film is about. Though saying that, there are a few where I've gone, because if I happen to want to see a film and then a friend wanted to as well, I wouldn't be against them coming with me. But there are certain films where I wouldn't want to go with anyone else. Like the one on Amy Winehouse, I knew that was going to be difficult for me for various reasons. I love her as an artist. I love covering her songs. It's really sad that she was taken from us at 27. That's no age at all. But I knew that because it was going to touch on her struggles with addiction, and obviously because my sister, and she won't mind me talking about this, was an addict for 5 years. And there were times where I thought that I was going to lose her. I knew it was going to bring up that stuff for me. It's not that I wouldn't have felt comfortable, because it depends who I would have gone with. I probably would have gone with someone that kind of knew that anyway. But I feel like I'd have been doing myself a disservice not giving myself that space and time to process it in my own way. Films quite often, ones that are quite deep and quite heavy and touch on things like that, I think about them for days afterwards, and I almost indulge in it and I enjoy it, and it's therapeutic for me to do so for lots of different reasons. But I almost feel like if someone was there with me, it would ruin it, take away from that experience that I like so much, even if it's not in the nicest of ways, if that makes any sense. It's just experience.
Absolutely.
I don't want to share it.
Absolutely. I know tons of people that like to go to movies by themselves for different reasons. One of the things I wanted to make sure of in this apartment that I've lived in for 17 years, and I thought I was going to move in here and pull the walls down and do all these renovations and it would be like magical, wonderful. And then I realized shit costs money. I don't have a lot of it. Get with the program. So we've made improvements and things like that, but this is the only real room that got done and finished. I love decorating. I love creating spaces that are relaxing so that I can relax in them. I find walking restful. I find climbing restful. I find being outside restful. I don't love washing the dishes, but I find it peaceful when I'm cleaning my apartment properly. It feels like the space is lighter and things are working nicely. Yeah, I just find rest in being able to wander freely and not have commitments and not have to rush to places. I get overwhelmed when I have too many commitments and then I don't feel rested. A few weeks ago, we went to see Paula Fold at Webster Hall. To our surprise, it was an over 40s crowd. There was space on the dance floor and everybody was super chill and well behaved. Normally, if I go to dance clubs and things in New York, it's full of people 20 years younger than me doing things I was probably doing 20 years ago.
I'm still doing now.
Yeah, I've grown out of it a little bit now, but we had such a good time. And we've got tickets for Paul Van Dyke at the end of the month, which I'm really excited about. Before that, we're going to something called Time Warp, which is definitely hard and fast. And then a week after that, there's this band called Chromeo, which is like electric punk, Funko Pop. It's a really good show and you can dance to it. But I'm like, have I overextended myself? Because now I've got to go and dance. And I love it because it's just like beats and music. And that's what I loved back in the day, right? There's so many people that are neurodivergent that don't like crowds, loud noises, bright lights and things like that. But they absolutely love going to the club, to a proper club, not like one of these where they're playing pop mixes and pretending they call it EDM. No, we want the old school, like techno, trance, hard house, whatever. So yeah, it's so rhythmic and the noises and things like that. You just get into this zone and you can dance all night. And like, I don't drink because obviously it makes me really sick. And I literally just don't take substances. I have a smoke every now and then. My friends call me California sober. And that's actually how I started clubbing as well. I never took drugs back when I first started going to Cream. I just lived on caffeine and good vibes. So it's good to be able to go there and just dance all night and feel on top of the world. All I've done is move my body, but that is rest for me. It feels so good. But I don't know how doing it 3 weekends in a row and then going to a comedy show right after it is going to be helpful. But on the 10th of December, I got tickets for me, Brian, and our friend Mel to go to Comic Relief hosted by Trevor Noah and John Oliver. Roy Wood Jr. is going to be there and some other comedians. John Oliver and Trevor Noah know the UK very well and know what comic relief is. The fact that it's called comic relief and it's at Carnegie Hall, maybe they're actually trying to get it really going here.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah,
Be
so
good.
I got tickets for that and we're quite excited about that. So I like John Oliver. I like Trevor Noah. I like some of the other comedians that are on the ticket. I love Roy Wood Jr. That's also what I do to relax. I freaking love comedy. Brian likes to listen to myths and legends and watch Tony Robinson doing like excavations and shit, which we've obviously grown up watching in school and our whole lives learning about our history. He's fascinated with it.
Saying that you love comedy and
So I will put on YouTube, I'll go to one of the comedy things that I follow, like Dry Bar Comedy, or individual comedians like Josh Johnson, Zoltan Kansas, and people. I just love to watch their comedy and laugh. And I love going to comedy clubs. I love going to shows like we've seen Alan Carr, Jimmy Carr, Ramesh, and a whole bunch of other people that are coming over here, James Acaster and stuff. And I just love it. That is another way for me to rest because there's nothing funnier than laughing the stupid shit that life throws at you. I just think it's the
yes.
only way you can get through life is by making a joke of it, no matter how dark that joke is. Or if it's about you or a situation you've been in, make the joke and make it as dark as you need to help yourself cope with the trauma.
Yeah, I agree. I'm actually going to a comedy show next Thursday, pun intended. We literally at my local theatre, there's 4 stand-ups just randomly doing a show, and the only seats available were right at the front, so we know we're going to get picked on. I already know the type of stuff that's going to be said about me, so I'm prepared. It's funny because the group I'm going with is it's like a really mixed group of ages. It's like local social group. So yeah, we're all different ages, different backgrounds. We all just live in the same area. So they're probably going to make a comment on like taking your daughter out. I think it's a really good situation for me because I've in the past, oh God, I feel sorry for the people who get picked on. And I'm like, no, bring it. Actually, what's the worst you can say? I know you're doing it to get laughs and it's not about me personally. If I was the target of a joke, it's just because I happen to be where it's really easy, and it would be whoever was sat in that row. So that would be quite interesting actually if that does happen, because I'm always looking at ways to deal with now I know what RSD is. The reason I feel like this is because of me. It's not what's happened, not the person, it's not what's been done or said. It's my reaction to it and learning how to manage and regulate that. So now it's almost like if I put myself in situations where that could happen, it's then what's the worst that can happen? We've done that now.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that's a great place for us to end for today.
Yeah.
This has been a really fun conversation of twists and turns, but we did keep getting back to the point, right? Which is rest isn't a list of 10 things that your employer is going to give you because they feel responsible for piling on and it looks good on LinkedIn. Rest isn't always sleep because that's a different thing in and of itself. Rest really is what you make it, and then maybe mundane tasks that you have to do on a daily basis that you can change your lens on, and instead of looking at them as a chore or a job or something, you can kind of look at it as a time to relax your mind and play your favorite music and dance around while you're cleaning. And it's also how you choose to fill your time and the people you choose to fill it with, and how that helps to support you and make you feel about yourself, what's going on in life, and all of those things. So I think we've had an amazing conversation, and I certainly want to come back to looking a little bit deeper into some of these prison stories and how we might be able to create interventions, because I know you and I are both coaches, mentors, and come with that psychology lens. So I think it might be nice for us to take a bit of a deeper dive into that area, looking at the psychology, the cognitive processes behind some of those things. Some of us get to go down this avenue and some end up down that avenue, but it could be very different for all of us. Had we made a different decision in a different moment, I think that would just be a really great conversation for us to have further.
Definitely.
Cool.
Sounds good.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
We hope to see you all next time.
Yes.
That brings us to the end of part 2 of our rest series. Thank you, Faye, for sharing your insight, your experience, and all of those beautiful examples of what rest can look like in real life. In part 3, I will be joined by Ian as we bring everything together and talk about rest, shutdown, and survival patterns in day-to-day life. We would love to have you with us for the final part. Until then, notice where your body is asking for rest and give yourself permission to answer it.